Among the vast amount of different genres out there, see, survival games are actually some of the best, diverse, and engaging games to play on cell phones. There's survival horror, there's survival mystery, adventure, action, you name it. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today on Mobile Game Zone, we're going to be looking at the top 20 best of such games to pick up and play for free on your Android and iOS devices as well. At number 1, and from only earlier June this year, we have here something called The Last Survivor. Now, this is a free-to-play offline adventure and post-apocalyptic survival horror game where pretty much like the old Walking Dead show, you're a lonely dude who gets to wake up after a coma in the city hospital. Anyway, I think it's a pretty good game. The atmosphere and the music is just so on point. It's got a smooth gameplay and some excellent graphics as well, pretty much reminiscent of old classic Resident Evil and even Doom games, in case you're into that. Coming up behind that, we have the one and only Last Day on Earth Survival, which is just a pretty typical, so to speak, survival game that's downloaded over 100 million times on the Play Store ever since 2017, where you will need to just gather supplies, fight zombies, build items in shelters, and more. Game's playable all the way free. It's got a very good review score on both platforms, and this is pretty much how it really works in terms of gameplay. At number 3, we've got something here called Mutiny, a pirate survival RPG. Well, obviously a survival game and the second title from these developers who are actually known for this type of games. See, the gameplay part mostly consists of role-playing and surviving on these adventures where you're actually beginning on this lonely island, and to survive you gotta gather stuff and hunt animals. There's also a hint of kind of pirate life stuff going on here. The game's been around since 2020, it's free and downloaded over 1 million times ever since. Moving on, we have Siren Heads, Haunted Horoscape. This is a first-person shooter or survival horror, and taking inspiration from games like Forest, but one where you have to deal with the, Siren Heads. Actually, the game is kind of okay. It looks nice and controls of which are well. The game will actually take you about 10 minutes to finish, and it's just like Siren Head on PCs except on mobile devices, the game. Game's all the way free. It's downloaded over 1 million times since a couple years ago, and it takes you about only 50 megabytes of space. At number 5, we have Walking Zombie 2, which is one of the more classic first-person shooters with an emphasis on story, quests, and then obviously surviving. Gameplay actually totally playable offline. It's basically an RPG at its core where you get stronger and tougher as you finish more quests and develop through the story. There is a truckload of variety in weapons in the game, zombies, bosses, you can't even shop, trade, loot, and so much more for a mobile game, so to speak. Moving on, we have Westland Survival. Technically an online Western role-playing game with hints of survival and over 10 million downloads on the Play Store. Personally, I did go with this one with my eyes closed, and I gotta say, I am loving it in every way there is. What an amazing game, honestly. Be it the graphics, gameplay, and story, it's all engaging and addictive. It actually used to be a pay-to-play kind of game, and now it is pretty much free. Check it out, the game worth at least a try if there's anything you like about it. Now, let's see. Are you a fan of horror games like Mr. Meat or Ice Scream, or I don't know, Silent Hill? Well, if you are, I'd say you're definitely gonna love this one. We've got here a survival horror first-person shooter here, and one actually with a ton of puzzles to spend time with and many endings to go through depending on what you decide throughout the gameplay. See, Antarctica 88 over here has been around for 2 years now. The game's downloaded over 10 million times. It's literally bug-free, it's playable offline, and this is how it really looks. Ark Survival Evolved at number 8, on the other hand, was, well, for those of you who don't know, who are unfamiliar, first released for PCs almost 5 years ago, and then almost a year later for mobile devices. It's pretty safe to say that the game is, in its current state, bug-free. This is a dinosaur survival game though, but with all the right elements as well. Like, you get to gather stuff, craft, build, and even manage stuff. The game is a survival adventure, is how it is described, not a horror game, and one specifically made for mobile devices. Check it out, just in case you missed it. Number 9, we have, from earlier this year, actually something called Gladiators or Gladiators, Survival in Rome, which is first of all an action RPG and pretty much a Trine or the Diablo game, but one that actually does have a lot of survival game mechanics and some big city building possibilities, in which you'll play as this fugitive from Caesar's army and get to venture deep into the wilderness of ancient Europe. It's a pretty decent game, very fun and entertaining, it's free, it is huge, and has a ton of replay value.
Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. Some turbulence.
At number 10, it's gotta be the one and only Lost in Blue, a survival game that's technically built on the idea of the TV show Lost. God, what a great TV show that was, and suffice it to say, it's actually really hard to find a survival game that is actually this good nowadays. It's a highly recommended in my book. I've been playing this one for a few months now. It is by far one of the best RPGs ever made on any platform, not just the mobile devices. Developers are actually always updating it. It's got everything you need for a mobile game, the plot, the graphics, the gameplay, and it's just perfectly done. It's a 10 out of 10. Make sure to give it a try. Moving on, we have another offline-based survival game, one of the more legitimate games that came out this year, something called Let's Survive. First of all, what is described by developers of which as a survival, role-playing, simulation, third-person, and action-adventure, in which you have to craft resources, build base, explore areas, survive zombies, and, well, obviously more. I'd say if you do like farming-style kind of survival games and where you get to do cooking and stuff, there's a good chance you might enjoy this one. The game is actually not easy to play. It's been around for a few months only, and it's downloaded over 5 million times already. At number 12, we've got the old case Animatronics Horror. Well, as you can see, a first-person stealth horror game first. Second of all, without a doubt, the best animatronic game that exists on the mobile devices right now. First of all, the game's got great graphics, as you can see, and somehow doesn't even lag on any mobile device if it supports the game. The controls of which are actually really good, and there's just one problem. The game is actually very hard and very scary. I wouldn't recommend this one for the faint of heart. I recommend it to you all above 16 at least. The game is downloaded over 10 million times, so it kind of speaks for itself, and it's all the way free.
System. Good. Let's see if it'll put you on the right track. It's time to remember, Bishop. Let's begin.
Guys, On the other hand, we have No Way to Die, once again from last year, actually around the same time now, as an offline post-apocalyptic survival and an exploration-based game where you have to mainly collect food and survive. Now, that is just a part. So obviously you get to gather resources, craft weapons, shelters, and eventually get to deal with loads of zombies as well. It's actually one of the better zombie survival games I've found by myself. It's a pretty good time waster. There's no pay-to-win elements here, just gotta watch a few ads and you'll be good to go. Coming up behind that at number 14, we have here just one pixel art game. This is the only one I promise, something called Build Heroes Idle Adventure. And the only reason we have this one in this list is because it's an idle game. There's always a few that prefer that type of game, so just in case, here's a good one. The game is downloaded over 5 million times since last year. It's got very positive review scores. It has a ton of ads to watch, so to speak, but believe it or not, it's actually made so well that it actually does worth it. Moving on. At 15, we have here from only last year, and actually downloaded several million times through different regions, something called Days After. Now honestly, I don't really have anything to say about this one except that this is a phenomenal game at its core gameplay. There's some sort of an endless amount of things to do in this one. It is free, it even plays offline, and it's got all the survival game elements as well. Check it out, the game also has a pretty good story on top. Alright guys, moving on, we have something called Dawn of Zombies, or DOZ, an online survival thriller, and obviously set in a post-apocalyptic world where those who have lived have to now survive against hunger, mutants, diseases, and radiation. There's more, of course, like other survivors. I gotta say, this is hands down, description aside, probably one of the top 5 survival games at the moment. It is actually very easy to play and very easy to get resources, the food, materials for the upgrades. There's so many things to do in this game. It's got one problem. It takes you down about 2 gigabytes of space. Coming up behind that, we have something called Live or Die, which is not a new game either. In fact, it's been around for more than 4 years now, and it's the kind of game that features both a post-apocalyptic world and an obscene amount of zombies to go through. So, you know the drill. You get to craft and go gather stuff and go bash a few brains as well. Overall, this is one of those allegedly free games, but pay to win to an extent. The single player experience, however, is pretty good, and you do not need to spend any money on that part. Check it out, the game's downloaded over 1 million times already.
Hey kid, wanna see a trick?
Alright guys, at number 18, we have ourselves here, actually from a couple of years ago, something called Freaky Clown Town Mystery. This is a horror game at first that I believe to have been taking cues from all ice cream games that are just exclusive mobile horror games. And about this clown in this neighborhood whose kids in the town just have named him as Freaky Clown. Anyway, this is actually a survival game with a dash of stealth. It's pretty easy and engaging in its controls, pretty scary with a lot of suspense and a good music too. At number 19, we have an online multiplayer, and like most other games today, just a top-down survival that takes place in this huge city and in a world after a zombie apocalypse, where an unknown virus has destroyed a large part of the population, and you're one of the few survivors who, along with a few others, get to walk around, gather stuff, and build pretty much everything, even vehicles. Game's graphics are, in my opinion, perfect for a mobile game, and there's actually a story in this game as well. And finally, we have one of the best clown horror games on the Play Store right now since a few years ago, in case you're unfamiliar with, something called Death Park, which is a survival horror game at its core that plays pretty much offline with some old school life save system with a pretty good visual for a mobile game. The animations are pretty good too, atmosphere, the audio of which is just terrifying. I would give it a 5 out of 5 and say if you like horror games rather than survival games, this is probably the one for you.